love that theme song. Welcome back to another episode of Horror Score, episode 12.
Boogeyman.
Not the 1980
No.
Boogeyman.
The 2005 Boogeyman.
So if you clicked on this.
Starring Barry Watson, hot off of his time on Seventh Heaven.
Oh.
So.
Yeah, so if you thought you were going to be getting that 1980s classic with a really cool cover, it's this one. So usually in Horror Score, we do pick a movie that we legally have attained, whether it's actually streaming on a paid service that we have, or if it's in our huge archive of horror films. And today's gem is Boogeyman. So anyway, we're your hosts, Jesse and
Vanessa.
And before we get started, I have a question for you, Vanessa, and the people at home. You can comment below. But right now, on the spot, what was the first horror movie that you've ever seen?
Okay, I was living in New Boston, and I had these neighbor boys. I don't know, I was like 5 or 6.
That's how it goes.
And Mal and Peter, I think Peter was like a year younger than me, and Mal was a year older. And Mal just wore a scream mask around like all the time, and then one day they convinced me to watch it. So Scream was my first, and I would say that was in the year 1999 when I was 6.
I was also 6. For me, I think it was Beetlejuice or it was Little Shop of Horrors. I saw them both in the theater, and I don't know which one I saw first. But
well, if Beetlejuice is horror, then I saw that before.
I mean, Beetlejuice counts as horror, right?
Okay, I'm gonna stick with Scream.
Okay. All right. If we're going strictly horror movies, for me it might have been Nightmare on Elm Street 1. If for some reason those other ones don't count.
The first movie I rented intentionally to watch it was technically a teen thriller, and it was Swim Fan in 2003 because Jesse Bradford.
It's a good name.
Was super cute, and I was obsessed with Bring It On at the time, the cheerleading movie, and he was in it. So
was that a PG-13 horror movie?
I think so.
This is also
there
a
was
PG-13.
some nudity. Yeah, there was a little bit of nudity. I got to see his butt. So.
Okay. Well, this is one of those like late 90s, early 2000s movies that came out where they were making a lot of PG-13 horror films, and it kind of rubs me the wrong way. It's like a cash grab where they're like, wow, if we make it PG-13, a lot of those middle schoolers can come see it. And everyone loves to be in the theater with middle schoolers.
But think about being that middle schooler, though, and like actually being allowed to see it. Like, that's important. It's important to start the youth.
You just need like a cool uncle to take you and sign you in, you know?
Some people don't have cool uncles, Jesse.
I do. This movie it's a tale of a guy who's terrified of the dark, and he goes to a super creepy house to his childhood home where he witnessed something very tragic happen. No real spoiler, it's the first minute of the movie. His dad gets eaten by his closet that contains a boogeyman. And he's afraid of everything in his adult life. 16 years later, he decides to go back to this house. But he can't even deal with leaving the lights off in his regular house.
They definitely took a page out of the book from Darkness Falls, which had come out.
There was a lot of similarities. Very similar intro.
It came out 2 years before this, but yeah, the whole flashlights and the flashing lights, and even going into the mental hospital and the lights needing to stay on. And
yeah. His apartment was cool. Like, I feel like they probably spent a long time making that set to use it for like a 3-minute scene. But his refrigerator had a glass door so that it could never close and be dark in there where the boogeyman would hang out. All of the cabinets have been taken off, like the kitchen, emergency lights everywhere. It was a nice set. But then that scene, then it was over and we never saw that room again. Do you want to talk about score in this film?
Yeah, that's why we're here.
All right, let's score this film. We rate this movie, and all movies on Horror Score, on a 20-point scale over 5 categories. The first category is story. What do you have to say about the story of this movie, and would you rate it?
Well, I gave story an 11. It was a familiar kind of story. Like I said, just immediately off the top of my head, I was reminded of Darkness Falls and that kind of thing. So it wasn't the most imaginative. But we did have the good Deschanel sister. We had Emily Deschanel. Wonderful. She's great in Bones. Nice little show. Um, there was a funny little moment. Like it got 11 points out of me for just, you know, trying and being followable. But so this couple, he has a girlfriend. Barry Watson has a girlfriend. They're in their 30s, easily.
Yeah, that's fair.
And they go to stay at her family's house for a holiday, and they have to sleep in separate bedrooms. And this isn't like
She's got an old-fashioned family.
There was no like religious inklings going on at the dinner. Like there was nothing like that. And then just suddenly, yes, and your bedrooms are made up. Like what?
No, that's what happens when you watch PG-13 movies. You get to sleep in separate rooms in it.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. It was for the rating.
I gave this movie a 9 on story. All the spookiness, the potential is there, but a lot of the movie is Tim, like looking at doors and being like, should I open this door? And like being really scared, which is okay a couple of times, but I think they go to the well once too often with him just looking at a part of the house that's kind of scary because he heard a weird noise, and then it turns out it's nothing or it's something, but then it's him walking around the house again. I think the movie probably would have played out better for me if he took a bunch of friends with him. I know it's a little cliche to be like, hey, 3 or 4 other college friends or coworkers, would you like to come with me to this old creepy house for the night?
It was a spooky house, though, just set-wise. It was great.
He just didn't have anyone to play off except himself.
His neighbor,
Yeah,
Emily Deschanel.
Yeah, she visited. She came over to say hi. She brought him, like, some pie, I think.
She time traveled through a closet with him.
We're going to get to the time travel warp stuff in a little bit. You ready for our next category?
Yes.
I am too.
Villain.
Well, this was a tough sell for me. I don't mind not seeing a villain. If the villain's not on camera, I get it. You're building suspense. I mean, just look at Alien. Great movie.
I mind.
I mean, I eventually want to see the monster. And when I eventually see the monster, I kind of want it to be awesome. This monster, we don't really see him, which is okay. But when we finally do, I feel like they bounce between not trying too hard, just throwing black and blue paint all over a guy, and then doing some real weird CGI. I didn't find myself afraid of the Boogeyman at all. He's supposed to be super scary. He's a boogeyman. I gave the villain a 7. No regrets.
I thought he was kind of spooky, and I'm usually not like big on CGI, especially if it's just like terrible. In this, don't get me wrong, this was like some bad CGI.
It was bad CGI.
But like, I just really liked I liked him, but he did scare me a little bit. And when you kind of discover the origin of the boogeyman at the end, I thought that was really creative. We never find out what happened to all those people he killed.
Nope, they didn't do any prequels either.
Nope.
Maybe. There is a weird little loose end. I guess there's that 1980s movie Boogeyman had a sequel, and then a third one came out, which I thought they weren't related, but there's a box set for this movie. It's like all 5 Boogeyman movies. So I don't know if they just got the rights to throw them all into one thing, but they use the same logo on the box set. So maybe they're connected.
So I gave the villain a 10.
That's fair. I gave him a 7. Our next category is my favorite category. It's my favorite thing about horror movies, and it's just the horror category. Would you like to take us into horror, Vanessa?
I can't. I'll have to wait an hour and a half and save it for the last 20 minutes. Because that's what this movie did. It strung you along for a long time with creaky staircases and closet doors opening. And the first 10 minutes of this movie, I thought were great.
Yes.
And then the last 20, I was like, oh, so they did have a horror budget. So I gave it a 9.
This town was really spooky. Like, I think it was filmed in New Zealand.
It was.
Was it? I saw that as I was looking up some things about this movie afterwards, and it's a spooky town. It's a spooky house. They had a lot of things going for them, and I feel like they dropped the ball. Like a bunch of people who knew how to make a good horror movie were kind of working with a limited script, or at least that's how I felt. There was good camera shots. There was some good suspense in the beginning.
It was kind of a lot like The Ring too. Like whenever she's walking through Samara Morgan's house, It reminded me a lot of that. Spooked horses running away, that kind of atmosphere.
And she just lets that horse go.
The horse, like, basically wrecks her. Like,
she just goes in for
she
lunch.
smacks her head on a rock, and then she just stands up like, oh, the horse will find its way back.
I guess. I gave horror an 11. The movie does a couple little original things, and then it gets a little tired, and then we have the climax. But the spooky town, the initial spookiness, like I was hooked and I was into it. And this is like my fourth watch of the movie, but it's been a while. I actually saw this movie in the theaters when it came out.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you also see Swim Fan in theater?
I did not. That was you.
I didn't. I rented it.
I did
That was
not.
a Blockbuster.
Oh, I miss Blockbuster. Kind of. I miss the idea of Blockbuster.
I miss Friday night.
I don't miss
movie. I miss like, oh, it's Friday night. Let's go to the video store.
And that's why we do that here on Friday nights. We get together and we watch horror flicks. Let's jump into the next category. Effects.
What did you think?
Let's see here. There were some things about the effects that I liked, being like the music, the set design. Like there's a creepy old house that he goes to down the street from the creepy old house that he's already in, and that place is fantastic.
It was like abandoned.
It's been graffitied. There's like signs of like a previous occupant who was terrorized by this boogeyman. The classic wall of missing person posters. And the cinematography was at some points fantastic.
Very creative camera work.
Like they did things they did not need to do in this movie that I was like, wow.
All of their transitions were
Some of the transitions were amazing. Like when he unlocks the house with the key. Like
and you get the inside.
They use like an inside the key lock cam, and all the tumblers like tick, 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 tick. Like
for no reason they spent that $1, and I appreciate it.
So the CGI stuff was bad, but a lot of the cinematography and things was really good. I gave it a 13. I think this was the strongest category in the movie, and at least when I was bored, I could be like, "Well, it's a nice camera shot. This is a nice low camera shot." I also
gave it a 13.
Nice.
Because for all the reasons you just stated, the score was wonderful. I kept like hearing the score later, like I was in the shower, like a couple days after we watched this movie, and I was like, kind of humming it, and then I got really scared.
Scared you were going to have to watch this movie again.
No, because that's what horror does. I don't know. You're supposed to be scared. If you don't have an active imagination, horror doesn't work for you.
Right. I get it. And this takes us to our last category, S Factor. I don't know how familiar you are with this category or this show.
They're familiar.
Are you sure?
Yes. Right. Look at them. They're pros.
Well, we stole this idea from Doomsday Preppers. It's where we can add arbitrary points to this movie, anywhere between 0 and 20, for whatever reason we want. Mm-hmm. How many points do you add? And why?
S Factor was originally a 9 for me. Barry Watson makes he and his girlfriend a couple of vodka Red Bulls. And apparently, to make them good, you have to wait for all of the ice to melt and then never drink them, because that was the kind of alcohol abuse that we witnessed during this movie. But he only made those drinks because... So this guy's mother had just died. That's why he's back in town, right? And his girlfriend comes because she's concerned. But then a few minutes later, she was like, can't we just have some fun?
Yeah, like I'm sick and tired of you being sad.
Exactly.
When is this going to end?
This guy's mother has just died, and her line is literally, can't we just have some fun? And so he was just like, yeah, I should probably shake off this whole my mom's dead thing, and I'm going to whip us up a couple of vodka Red Bulls.
So it goes to the ice machine.
If that had been all, I would have given it a 9. But it gets a 10. Because his dead mother, that we learn from a flashback, is Lucy Lawless. And you'll always get a cameo point from me, Lucy.
All right. I gave it a 5, and it was for each of the aforementioned cool time-shifting things. I think that was my favorite part of this movie. The spooky town and the weird time-shifting, strange teleportation that happens. They do it 5 times. So we'll get 5 S Factor points.
My favorite part was that he kept meeting up with this weird, like, middle school girl.
Franny.
outside of his house. I was like, where is this going? I'm all uncomfortable. And then I kind of figured it out.
But it was weird. He's just, like, hanging out with this kid, like, hey, kid, give me some advice. What are you, like, 7? Tell me how to beat this boogeyman, 7-year-old.
Yeah.
Hey, wait, it's 3 a.m. Why aren't you home?
Yeah. No, he like goes to look for her.
Yeah, I was looking for you. And like,
Yeah.
You were? You were looking for a 7-year-old
You
that
said-
you saw earlier today?
You said you lived around here, so I went to the playground.
So before we total these up, we're going to do Vanessa's one-sentence synopsis for this movie.
In a setup never attempted before by a horror film, a boy moves from his small town and makes it big in the city, only to return home to the demons he left behind.
So there you have it. Rotten Tomatoes gives this movie a 13%, and IMDb gives it a 4.2. I've given it a 45 out of 100 possible points. 100's probably
And
impossible.
I gave it a 53.
Okay, and so 53 and 45, that gives us an average of 49 horror score points. That's 49 reasons to check this movie out, or don't.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for another member of the Seventh Heaven cast to break out into horror acting. Jessica Biel did. And I can't remember the name of that movie, so it's now on your screen.
Okay. And as usual, give us 15 minutes, and maybe we'll save you 2 hours.
Stay spooky.